Hello students, this is Professor Lorenzo and welcome to today's online class. Today we're going to talk about verb tense and then we'll also talk a little bit about citing. So verb tense, what is it? It's not very difficult. We all use verb tense in language every day and of course we use it a lot in writing. Verb tense basically comes in three tenses. It's when we're writing or talking about the past, when we're writing or talking about the present, or writing and talk about the future. The past is used to describe things that have already happened, such as earlier in the day, yesterday, last week, 3 years ago, or even a million years ago. And of course, present tense verbs are verbs we use to describe what's happening right now. Let's take the verb talk, for instance. I'm talking to you. Talking, by adding the ing, means that what I'm doing in the present tense. We also have the future tense, the next big thing. These are things that are going to occur in the future. For example, 15 minutes later, an hour later, tomorrow, or the day after, or even a million years later. There are also two special forms that are very common, past participle and present participle. So, past participle are verbs that end with ed or en, examples such as eaten or walked. And present participle are verbs that end with ing, example, eating, sleeping, practicing, or what I said earlier, talking. So what is a participle? Participle is a modifier that's attached to a verb. It gives the verb the ability to describe the subject in a sentence. These modifiers can be ing or end. Here's some examples. The mechanic is working on my truck. In this case, the verb is work. It's changed to working and is describing the action associated with my truck. Now here's a simple chart to give you an idea of how to change a verb to past, how to keep it in the present, or how to change it to future. The past, we either use ed or it can be an irregular verb. The present, we can add an s, es, or maybe no ending at all, and it also can be an irregular verb. Or in the future, we usually add will before the verb to turn it into a future tense. Here are some common verbs and their different conjugations. I'll just look at one. Let's look at walked. That's the past tense. Present, walk. Future, will walk. If we looked at the past participle, it's the same as the past. And the present participle is adding ing to it. You can take a longer look at these in our static lesson for today. Now let's view a short video from corny Mr. Khan.
Hello, grammarians. Today I want to introduce the idea of the verb tense. And the way I want to do that is to express the following. If you can master grammatical tenses, you will become a time wizard, a literal, actual time wizard. Because tense is nothing more than the ability of verbs to situate themselves in time. Specifically in three different times. So in the past, the present, or the future. It can happen. When we're talking about a verb can happen now, a verb can happen later, and a verb can have happened in the past, then. That's basically it. And if you master tenses, you will be able to tell stories that span all of time. And I think that ability is kind of astonishing, that language can express that sort of idea. To just give a very simple example, I'll just take the word talk and put it in these three basic tenses. Now, it does get more complicated than this, sure, but we'll cover that later. So if I take the verb to talk, and I put it in the present, I would just say, I talk. The most basic iteration, I talk. In the future, I will talk. And in the past, I talked. This is the simple form of every English tense. Past, present, future. If you can command all of these, you will be a time wizard. That's you. You can learn anything. David out.
So that was the simplest form of verb tense. It can get a little more complicated, and of course you need a little more complication when you're writing because you don't always want to just say, as David said, I talk, which in this chart would be the exact same thing as I run. There's also the continuous way of using verb tense, the perfect way of using verb tense, and also the perfect continuous way of using verb tense. And I'm not going to ask you to memorize, continuous perfect or perfect continuous. But what I am going to say is just remember when you're writing, there's more than one way to skin a cat. You don't always have to say I run. You can say I am running, or you can say I have run, or you can say I have been running. Those are all present terms of the verb run. Now let's talk a little bit about citation, and we'll start with this video.
This short library video will help you know why you have to cite your sources and when to do it. So why do you need to cite your sources? When you cite your sources, you are giving credit to those who have created the idea or information. Citing also demonstrates that you've done your research, and it shows that your arguments have support. If you don't cite your sources, you are committing plagiarism, which is like stealing. When do you have to cite your sources? As a general rule, you need to cite your source any time you borrow an idea, opinion, or finding. Here are some examples of key times you need to remember to cite your sources. Number 1. Direct quotations. Reference all direct quotations when you use someone's exact words. Number 2. Paraphrases and summaries. Reference even when you put information into your own words by paraphrasing or summarizing ideas, opinions, or interpretations. Number 3. Statistics, data, images, and other pieces of information originally created by others. You must cite any information created by others. Anytime you include and cite information from a source, make sure to explain to your reader how the evidence connects to the claims you are making. You don't need to document information that is common knowledge, information that is widely known. If you aren't sure whether you should cite a source, do it. Need help? Ask us. Chat, email, phone, or drop by. This concludes the library video on why you have to cite your sources and when to do it.
All right. So, again, when to cite sources, when copying word for word a passage from your sources, it must be put in quotation marks and properly credited. When your quotation is longer than 3 lines, it must be indented without quotation marks and single space. We talked about that earlier in the year. It's called block quotation. When copying a number of words, not necessarily an entire sentence from a source or a book, this passage must be put in quotation marks and credited. When paraphrasing, remember paraphrasing is taking someone else's words and changing them into your own. But when paraphrasing a passage or sentence from one of your sources, the paraphrase must be properly cited. Even if you switch the words and sentence structure around considerably, the passage is still considered a paraphrase and credit must be given to its author. And then also, when using an idea, conclusion, framework, thesis, structure, or theory from a source, it must be properly cited. Remember, you don't have to cite your own ideas. If you came up with it yourself, you don't have to worry about citing it. But you do have to cite exact quotes from papers you've previously written and submitted for a grade or publishing. So if you're taking the exact words from something you've written before, you must let your reader know that you did so. Okay? So that's it. That concludes today's lesson on verb tense and citation. Have a great day, students. I'll see you in class here soon, and we'll end up with maybe a little bit of my favorite there,